Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on where you are. Dylan Bruton, host of Pelicans Daily presented by Fan Arch. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. We keeping it going, we keeping it rolling. I appreciate y'all for all the support. Well, OKC right now is BTA status with those Timberwolves right now. It's not looking good. Hopefully the Timberwolves turn it around and make it a little bit more competitive, but SGA very much is showing why he's the MVP. But we ain't here to talk about all of them, but I'm not going to lie, this Knicks-Pacers game tonight is probably going to be must-see TV. So, gotta just show love to the NBA as a whole. But let's talk about those Pelicans. Now, a name that I never thought would see floating around in trade talk. Herb Jones. Mr. Jones. My guy, Herbert. Man, oh man. So Clutch Points very recently, just put out an article, and it was talking about there's a potential possibility that Herb Jones might be used as a trade chip. Now, personally, I am very against this idea. Very. I'm very against Zion, and I'm very against Herb Jones, right? The reason why I'm against Herb Jones is that a player like Herb Jones is exactly what a franchise that is trying to build a winning culture. He is exactly the type of player that you have on your team. Willing to do all the dirty work, doesn't need any glory, loves to be there, has a vibrant personality, players feed off him. Those are the type of guys that you want in your locker room. Those are the kind of guys you want to be a leader on the court. Now, they might not be the definitive number one leader, but they are a leader out there on the court. And he's one of the best defenders in the entire league. Was on the all defensive first team in 2024. Average last year 10 a game, 4 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals, nearly a block. Proving his three-point shot daily. I mean, the young man, ever since he came through, and he was a second-round pick, mind you, which is why I say you can't discredit those second-round picks. I mean, look, Jokic was a second-round pick, okay? A guy like Manu Ginobili was a second-round pick. A guy like Ben Wallace wasn't even drafted, you know what I'm saying? You can't diminish late-round draft picks, regardless of whatever sport. Talent can be found anywhere. How people produce is all predicated upon their fit, their attitude, and their ability to adapt. Which I guess you could say goes with the fit. And fit he has. I mean, he was on the all rookie second team back in 2022. But the thing that people are factoring to why he might be used as a potential trade piece is because he is from the previous administration, the previous regime. He was under David Griffin's presidency, and now obviously we've got President Joe Dumars. Now, I'm not gonna lie. While the large part of the article was talking about that, just given that he's a holdover from previous and that he's still young. Me and Herb's only a couple months older than me. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to us, class of 17 guys. But he's 26, going on 27. And given that he's still young and there still is growth in his game, but he has also shown himself to be one of the best defensive players in the league, that's the type of guy who holds value. But he's not just limited to being a defender. He can handle the ball a bit. And a player that Herb reminds me a lot of is Tayshaun Prince. He reminds me a lot of them. Both lefties, both very wiry and long, but also able to handle the ball when need be and can hit open threes, can hit open shots. Not a number one scorer, not going to be the guy that you say, hey, Herb, go cook. Just like the Pistons weren't saying, hey, Tayshaun, go cook. But someone who can make big plays, right? I always think about that crazy chase down block that Tayshaun had on Reggie Miller in the 04 playoffs. And that was like, I was a little kid, didn't really know ball like that, you know what I'm saying? But that was a iconic moment. And I remember when I met Tayshaun Prince when I was about in 6th grade, I brought that up to him. He was like, you remember that? I said, yeah. I was like, man, that should show me how valuable defense was. He was like, man, that's what's up. So like, that stuff like that sticks out. And someone like Herb Jones, you know what I'm saying, played a very valuable role to us making the last two playoff runs that we did. You know what I'm saying? And he played great defense in both series. He was able to keep Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, you know what I'm saying, keep them not, as hyperactive as they normally would be on the offensive end. And then last year, you know what I'm saying, he was able to play great defense on J-Dub and SGA the times that they matched him up on him. That's what people forget, is that SGA wasn't getting a lot of his points on Herb. You know what I'm saying? I wish we put Herb on SGA a little bit more. But a player like Herb Jones, it's tough to lose a player like him because of the value that he brings on the defensive end, the energy that he infuses into the lineup, and the love that he has. You know what I'm saying? He is by far, I would say by far, him and Jose are probably the most beloved players. And granted, it's different being loved as a role player than being loved as a star. But that love as a role player is serious, and it's usually an indicator of someone who is also, loved and appreciated on the team, just because he's able to do so much without needing too much. And I would be incredibly sad to see Herb go. I don't want us to pull the trigger and make that type of move. I don't even want us to float him out there as bait. You know what I'm saying? Because that also has an impact on a player. Like, knowing that a team might ship you, it makes you feel like, dang. So like, y'all don't value me, y'all don't appreciate what I've been able to do, and I don't think that would be the wise move. But it's being talked about, and there's several teams that are looking for a player like Herb Jones and might offer something nice in return. So unfortunately, the nature of the business, they're gonna definitely take heed and listen and see what type of offers. But just like how I'm saying, don't get rid of Zion, don't get rid of Herb Jones. Do not. I just mentioned Tayshaun Prince. Tayshaun Prince was a very valuable piece of that 04 team. He played some impeccable defense on Kobe, prime Kobe, in that 04 finals. That could be the same type of impact that Herb Jones has for us. I strongly believe that Herb is the type of player that you keep around for the long haul. Don't care. That's my perspective on it. But I'm not the one in control, so we're only going to see where this all goes. Now, another player. Now, I've seen a couple of people comment him, and that's why I wanted to talk about him, because this was actually a pretty intriguing idea. So, should we make a move for Jabari Smith Jr.? Now, the Houston Rockets this past year, shout out to them. They're a team that I mentioned before as a blueprint of who we could, model ourselves after as far as building a roster from top to bottom, especially through the draft, through the youth. And they enjoyed a breakout year this year, second seed in the West after the OKC Thunder. You know what I'm saying? Granted, they lost to the Warriors, but that was a series where, the pedigree of the Warriors, and then Steph Curry, right? He's still Steph Curry, okay? Don't ever count him out. But Jabari Smith Jr. is going to be eligible for a contract extension, but he isn't a restricted free agent until next summer. But that means that teams can make a move for him. And there is talk that he might be the odd man out, just given that, they know that Sengun is the center of their future. Jalen Green is likely their shooting guard of the future. I mean, I hope he is, but he can be a little inconsistent. And then Amin Thompson is 100% like the hybrid small forward / point of the future. You know what I'm saying? You still got guys like Cam Whitmore off the bench. I mean, the amount of young talent that Houston has is crazy. And then you got veterans like Fred VanVleet, who won a title with those 2019 Raptors, was an all-star a couple years. You know what I'm saying? He's a big-time shot maker in the clutch. Dylan Brooks, look, jokes aside, he's an interesting type of wrestling heel, but out there, you know what I'm saying, he's got that junkyard type of mentality, and he can hit some threes, and he played pretty well for the Rockets, and ever since he came over from the Grizzlies. And even young guys like Tari Eason, who, are able to be defensive stoppers, kind of like a Herb Jones for us off the bench. So, they're a team that they have a lot of talent, but where does Jabari fit? You know what I'm saying? Third overall pick in the 2022 draft. I was very high on him coming out of the draft. I thought that, you know what I'm saying, as a Duke fan, obviously I was Paolo all year. And right after it was Jabari. You know what I'm saying? The young man is 6'10", comes from an NBA pedigree himself. His dad, Jabari Smith Sr., played in the league for a few years. Versatile small forward, power forward. This last year averaged 12 a game, 7 boards and assists on around 44% from the field. I need to stop. I just need to say 44% shooting instead of from the field, because that's where I get tripped up. 35% from three, because he's got the floor spacing ability, and 82, about like 83% from the free throw line. Those numbers declined though, you know what I'm saying, partially just due to the defensive focus that, Sengun and Green occupied, but just also his role diminished, which I thought was very telling. I thought it was very telling in them 7 games that they didn't utilize Jabari Smith more. He only averaged 7 points, about 4 rebounds, and nearly an assist a game, and nearly a block a game. On 50% shooting, nearly 46% from 3, and 80% from the free throw line. And I was very puzzled by that. You know what I'm saying? I rock with Coach Udoka. I think he's a great coach, and he was able to – he's turned around that team. You know what I'm saying? He's instilled the type of hard-nosed culture that they desperately needed and definitely needed. But I was very shocked that he didn't, want to utilize Jabari Smith Jr. more, especially given, how big he was to the development of – Jason Tatum, a player who, there are some similarities as far as being a tall, versatile 3-4 who can handle the ball, space the floor, create. But obviously he hasn't taken that next leap, which is where some people within the Rockets brass and just some people in general feel like that would make him expendable. You know what I'm saying? He had an incredible freshman year at Auburn. He averaged 17, 7, 2, a steal, and a block, 43% shooting, 42% from the three-point line, and 80% from the free throw line. It's compared to all-stars like Rashard Lewis, compared to Chris Bosh, compared, all-star as well, compared to guys like Michael Porter Jr., who, had moments where he looks like he's a borderline all-star. Class 17 as well, shout out. And I never, again, I talked about this a couple videos ago, tall, 6'7" to 6'10", slim wing that can score. KD comparison, they love doing that. But he's got a couple KD comparisons. But I think the Rashard Lewis and Chris Bosh is a lot more where he resides. But Rashard Lewis was a multi-all-star, was the number 1 guy out in Seattle, and then was able to be a great number 2, number 3 floor spacer in Orlando on those teams with Dwight and Turkoglu and Jameer Nelson. And then Chris Bosh. Chris Bosh was the guy in Toronto after Vince Carter, and, was a very valuable number 3 on those big 3 teams with LeBron and D. Wade. Jabari Smith Jr. would fit in well, I think, with New Orleans, as far as, his ability at his size and his floor spacing. You could put him either at the 4 or at the 3, get creative with the lineups. I don't feel like his play style coincides with Zion's. I don't feel like his play style coincides with Missy. I don't even feel like his play style coincides with Trey Murphy. I feel like of a lot of players, he would fit. We do need more size. We do need players that are able to space the floor and play defense, because last year the Rockets had the 4th-ranked defense in the league. A Coach Udoka team is going to have great defense. And Jabari Smith Jr., when on the court, was able to play good defense. He is a talented defender. We do need defense. Make no mistake. And then I still think the potential with him is very high. I actually, so I lived in Atlanta back in 2024 for for the first part of the year, and I was there since 2020. And I wasn't at this particular game, but I remember some of my friends went, but it was a game in the 23-24 season, and Jabari went off. Man, had 34, 13, and 4 blocks. That type of production is more of an indicator of his potential than anything. I still think that he's got all-star potential. I still think that he is going to show why he was the 3rd pick, whether it's in Houston or not. I feel like either they figure something out there, but if we make a move for him, I do feel like he would fit well, just given, again, youth, his ability, his length, size, his ability to space the floor, his ability to defend, and his ability to play on and off the ball. Now, I do believe, like, yes, he still has to get stronger. He has to also work on not settling for so many jumpers as opposed to using his height. But, you know, that stuff like that can be fine-tuned. You know what I'm saying? He's 22 years old, right? He's played 3 years in the NBA, only 22 years old. So he's incredibly young. And we're a team that is building. We're a team that has shown flashes. He's a player that's shown flashes. He's a player that's shown improvement in the skill set. So, hey, food for thought. Be prepared to get annoyed at me saying food for thought, but I just feel like it's the best statement to describe it. But that was a player that I saw some of y'all talk about in the comment section, and I figured, hey, y'all right. I've always liked Jabari Smith Jr.'s game, and I feel like he's got a lot of potential. Wouldn't mind bringing him to the Bayou. I don't want us to give up the farm for him now, right? I'm not suggesting anything crazy, but reasonably, you know what I'm saying? Hey, let's talk shop. Let's see. But it all depends on, I do feel like it depends on what happens on draft day. Because I wanted these next two, we talking about the draft. So the draft ain't till the 25th of June, so we still got some time. But 2 players that I've talked about previously. I'm going to start with one of them. Mr. Kon Knueppel. Man. 6'7" small forward, but also can play the 2. Had an incredible freshman year. One of the most efficient freshman years I've ever seen of a player. Averaged 14 a game, 4 boards, nearly 3 assists. Shot 48% from the field, 91% from the free throw line, and nearly 41% from the three-point line. And a lot of people forget Cooper Flagg was out for the ACC tournament semifinal against UNC and the ACC championship against Louisville. Guess who stepped up in both of those games? Kon. The Wrath of Kon, word to Star Trek. He stepped up immensely. Put up 17, 4, 3 and a steal and made 3 threes, including a big one in the fourth quarter. College. In the last part of the second quarter that was able to put them up, and they won that game. They won that game in a very close 74-71 win, and that was in the semifinal. And then he put up 18, 8, and 3 assists to go along with 2 steals. You know what I'm saying? He was very active on the defensive side of the ball against Louisville. They won that one a little bit easier, but still, it was like a 9-10 point victory. And he stepped up. That's the key thing. Cooper Flagg was out. Folks was like, yo, maybe Duke doesn't capture the ACC championship. Maybe they're not a number 1 seed. And Kon was like, not on my watch. Okay? Not on my watch. And given that as a player, right, you can kind of, I'm going to throw names out there. So I threw out names like Cam Johnson, Bojan Bogdanovic, Jared Dudley. I mentioned Chris Mullin as the ultimate highest ceiling of where he could go. 7th pick in the 85th draft. So, maybe 40-year run. Who knows? But there were some other guys that I saw that he was compared to that I feel like, I could see this too. We got another Blue Devil in Luke Kennard. Shout out to my boy Luke. We got Gordon Hayward, who, prior to that devastating injury that he suffered in the first game of the 2017-2018 season in Boston, he was looking like his star was on the rise. You know what I'm saying? He was an all-star in Utah. Did have some good years in Boston, just never was able to recapture that all-star level status. But I could see that as, again, an ultimate high-level, high ceiling, you know what I'm saying? Obviously, Gordon was a bit more of an on-ball scorer, and that's where Kon definitely has to improve. But he's not it's not like he can't put the ball on the ground and create a shot. It's just not that's not his best skill set. Another name, Evan Fournier. Evan Fournier was able to play a long time in the league. You know what I'm saying? He was getting buckets a couple years ago with the Knicks. And they could definitely use a player like him off the bench. I'm not gonna lie. And then this name, like, two reasons why I was like, this is actually a good comparison. One, because of like the inside out duo that they were, but Wally Zerbiak, and I was about to call him Wally sipping on some scissor if y'all ever seen the Jamie Foxx show. But I like this comparison a lot. You know what I'm saying? Wally was a very efficient high shot maker, could shoot from the three. Him and KG were a good inside out tandem. And, you know, obviously Zion isn't KG, but as far as just the physical presence in the paint, you know what I'm saying, having a guy like Kon to kick the ball out to, doesn't need the ball a ton, I think that would work. I think that would work well. But Wally could put the ball on the ground. You know what I'm saying? Wally wasn't no punk. I know, you know what I'm saying, I know a lot of Pacers fans right now are giving Wally grief about his Halliburton take from a couple years ago. But, hey, Wally could play. Wally could play. He played for a long time. You know what I'm saying, the Timberwolves, the Supersonics, Celtics, Cavs, and he was a contributing player. So if any of those players, if Kon, and obviously Chris Mullin is the ultimate, like, if he can get there, then we hit this pick out the park. But if he can reach to any of these type of players there, I think that's a pick well spent. I think that's a guy who, again, is able to play a very valuable role and also able to take over and get hot when needed. And you need that. You know what I'm saying? We have the potential to have such a well-balanced scoring team. You know what I'm saying? Like if we just go off paper, championships are not won off paper. But if we're just going off of paper, we have so many players that can catch fire and get hot. I would not be opposed to this pick. I mentioned right now Jeremiah Fears. Right now I'm really feeling. I know some of y'all was like, no, we need a player a little taller. And given some of his efficiency concerns, I hear all that. I do. But I think the two-way ability and just the overall star potential he has, and given we don't have a lead guard in mind for the future just yet, right? Because not saying like someone like DeJounte is old, but he's not a spring chicken either, and an Achilles injury is nothing to scoff at. But with Kon, you know, you can insert him either as a 2 or a 3, but you can have a guy like him come off the bench and be a 6-man. You can have, you know, depending on how things go, if we end up, you know, losing DeJounte or CJ, but we still got Trey Murphy, God willing. You know, you could put him next to Trey Murphy, or you could put him next to a Herb Jones. So I feel like someone like Kon would be a pick well spent. I'm not opposed to the pick idea, and if he can reach any of those players that I've named, especially guys like Chris Mullin or guys like Gordon Hayward or Wally Zerbiak, you know what I'm saying, all these guys are all-stars, then again, we knock this pick out the park. But even a guy like Cam Johnson or Bojan Bogdanovic, when need be for their respective franchises, they can get hot. They don't need the ball much, but if need be, they can get hot, they can get buckets, and they play tough. I always like players who play tough, who play with some heart, play some edge. So, food for thought. All right. And then the last guy, and I do want to, if he's out there watching me, Mr. Murray-Boyles, I'm so sorry for mispronouncing your name all these times. Your name is not that hard to pronounce either, so I don't know what was going on. But Collin Murray-Boyles. Now, he's a player who I mentioned before. There's some names that, you know what I'm saying, if you really know ball, you might know the comparisons for. But let's just talk about his game. Sophomore last year, just turned 20 years old, so very young, very spry. 6'7", 6'8", roughly power forward, so on the undersized end of it. Averaged about 17 a game, 8 boards, 2 assists, a block, and nearly 2 steals a game. On very efficient shooting, and had some big games. Very big games. Was an all-SEC first-team back-to-back years. Put up 35, 7 and 4 steals on 12 of 16 shooting. So that's crazy efficiency versus Arkansas. And watching his game, you know what I'm saying, I named guys because I talked about in my first video. I talked about guys like Grant Williams. I talked about guys like Paul Millsap, Danny Fortson, Julius Randle. But I think some other guys that we haven't talked about of him being compared to, a guy like Draymond Green, a guy like Anthony Mason. You know what I'm saying? You kind of get the picture. Physical, very stout, you know what I'm saying? Kind of an immovable object, but a player who can impact the game as a mid-range shooter in the low post, excellent defender, very active on ball, and very active in defending the rim. And given how poorly we were at defense last year, 29th, that means we were next to last, right? I'm not opposed to adding a player who can play on the perimeter and at the basket. You know what I'm saying? And his size, he's kind of like a Swiss Army knife, just able to kind of do it all, being versatile, being able to do multiple things. I'm not opposed to a player like him. Now, where does he fit? Because that does beg to ask some questions, because we already got Zion. Does that mean we do something crazy? Because I saw in this last video, someone said, why would we move to Zion to the 1? I'm gonna talk about that more extensively, about the prospect of that, but for another video. Definitely want to save that one. But that might be a very interesting thing. Given if we do draft a big, whether we're drafting Collin or whether we're drafting Kamal Malak, there are some very interesting, possibilities on what would happen if we put Zion at the 1. But, with Collin, you can put him, slot him at that 4 spot. He's going to get rebounds, offensive rebounds and defensive rebounds. He's going to be a physical presence in that paint. But he's also going to be someone who, with his back turned can get shots, can get points. And, I feel like there was another name that I think there was another name that I threw for him that, kind of goes with who he is as a player. Oh no, never mind. That was for Derek Queen. But what I talked about with Derek Queen, as far as like being that player that has the soft touch, that has the post game, and is kind of like an immovable force, you can kind of apply that with Collin. Obviously, he's a little shorter than Derek Queen, but he's a bit more built. Like, he's a bit more like swole, compact. Who knows, right? Now, you can't really throw him at the 5, you know what I'm saying? But he set screens like a 5. That's one thing. That young man can set a screen. You know what I'm saying? I don't care what no one says. You can set a good screen. That opens things up for the offense incredibly. We do run a lot of pick and roll. We do run a lot of high screen in our offense. So wouldn't be opposed. And I feel like, granted, South Carolina was not a team that really, competed at a high level, but they were a very tough-nosed team. It wasn't like, you were just going to walk into their arena and play them any which way. Obviously, they're not the level of the women's program, but they've got a very solid program. He himself said he wants to improve on his 3-point shooting because he made about like 9 threes, but he's got the mechanics. He's got the mechanics as a player, in my opinion. And I think with some of those guys that I named, especially guys like Paul Millsap and Julius Randle, them adding that 3-point shot to the game, it made them so much more impactful and dynamic because it wasn't like, okay, I just got to guard them when they're facing up or when they're putting their head down and boom, boom, But now I got to watch for them as a floor spacer. And both those guys, Julius Randle and Paul Millsap, Julius Randle's still playing. Paul had a great career, multi-all-stars, and able to space the floor. And then, like, the physicality of an Anthony Mason back in the day, RIP, as an undersized power forward. Anthony Mason was a very valuable, physical piece next to Patrick Ewing. He was a big reason why the Knicks were, kind of like the epitomized physical 90s basketball. He was a very big reason why. Him and Charles Oakley, I would say. And then, Draymond Green, love him or hate him, but he is definitely, the heart of the Golden State Warriors still to this day, still, that physical piece. But then the point forward ability, you know what I'm saying? I think there is a lot of room to grow for Collin. I don't think we would put him at the 1, but, there definitely would be some lineups where they say, hey, Collin, like, we want you to, catch the ball early, initiate the offense, create a look for somebody else. And he has that ability. Imagine you put him on a team where he's got, Trey Murphy on the wing, or CJ McCollum on the wing, or DeJounte at the top of the key, or Zion cutting the basket. You know what I'm saying? Imagine putting him on a team where he's got to do less scoring and can create looks for others. Hey, could work. It really could work. And he's from South Carolina, so like I said with Kon, even though he's from South Sudan, but him being in North Carolina. But I guess you could apply the same for Kon. But South Carolina ain't that far from Louisiana. Come on down to the Bayou. I think as a player, I think that Collin would fit really well. I'm not as hyped on him as I am with Jeremiah or with Kon potentially, but I wouldn't be opposed if we did make a move to get Collin. I do feel like there is potential that he has that is able to go forth, and we don't fully know his ceiling, but he could be incorporated into a variety of different roles. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't hurt to have a player who can play defense at a high level, and it never hurts to have a player who can rebound at a high level. Okay, just never hurts. And we if we want to, I feel like if we want to establish a brand and a culture, it's got to be through some physicality. Teams cannot feel like they can come into the paint and bully us. Seriously. We've got to get way better at defending the paint, way better. But we need players who can defend at the paint and in the paint and on the perimeter. Seriously. Because that's going to play such a huge role in us establishing an identity. But that's all for today. Again, some more ideas, more potential draft targets, and some potential rumors on the fold. Stay tuned for more. Make sure to follow me at Dylan _Bruton Bruton 10 on Instagram. Make sure to like, share, subscribe. Make sure to follow FanArch on all social media platforms. They're doing a tremendous and amazing job with their content promotion. They've got so many different things that they're doing, so you're not going to want to miss it. But this has been an incredible episode of Pelicans Daily. Much love to all of y'all, and continue to show me. I've been having a blast. We got more on the way. Y'all stay blessed. Stay tuned for more. Ciao.